Hello, dear students of secondary. Our session today is going to deal with poetry. Actually, we are going to have a kind of introduction to poetry in order to remind you and practice together how to analyze some lines, even if they were unseen ones. Okay, before going on with the unseen poetry, let's revise together some literary terms that are helpful to us. First of all, when you have any verse in front of you, any lines, the first thing that comes to your mind is that you must paraphrase them. What does it mean by paraphrase? Paraphrase, it means to explain these lines, but in your own words. Fine? In order to make sure what the poet wants to convey or to say in these lines. Then, step number 2, you started to pick out the figures of speech within these lines, okay? What are these figures of speech? Things that make poetry something distinguished, okay? Something remarkable, different from any kind of writings. So, first of all, you can find something that is called simile. What is a simile? It's to compare two things, or compare two things using like, as, and resembles, okay? So, for example, when you say, she is like a moon, okay? Here you compare this girl to a moon using the word like. And of course, you can find instead of like, as or resembles. You remember the poem that was by William Wordsworth? Okay, I wandered lonely as a cloud. In this line, he compared himself to a cloud. Then, if we want to compare two things, but without using as or like or resembles, what can we call this? We call it metaphor. Okay, so a metaphor is a comparison of two things without as. So here I can simply say, she is a moon. I compare this girl to a moon without the word as or like. Then, you have something that's called personification. What does it mean by personification? To personify, it means to compare something that is non-human and give it the quality of a human. For example, I am busy, said the sea. Of course, you remember this line. I think that most of you had this as the first poem, okay, in Prep 1. So, I am busy, said the sea. Here, we gave a human quality to the sea, which is non-human, okay, that he can talk and that he is busy. So this is what is called personification. Then, another figure of speech is the contrast. What's contrast? Contrast when you have opposing ideas, maybe two opposite words, two opposite phrases, or maybe you can find some stanzas or some poems that are based on contrast. The whole idea is based on contrast. So, usually the contrast is used to clarify the meaning. So, if you have, for example, words like enemy and friend, up and down, here and there, etc., once there are opposites, we call them contrast. Okay. Another figure of speech, which is alliteration. What's alliteration? It's the repetition of initial consonant sounds. What does it mean by initial? It means the beginning. So when you have two words in the same line that begin with the same sound, and bear in mind that it's sound, not letter, okay? And this sound is consonant, it's not a vowel. Look at this example. Said and see. You have the sound s is repeated at the beginning of these two words, said and see. So this is what we call alliteration. But look at this, said and showed. Although these two sentences began with the same letter, but they do not have the same sound. So this is not alliteration. Okay, assonance. What's assonance? It's the repetition of vowel sounds. So it's like alliteration, but alliteration was for the consonant sound and especially at the beginning. But the assonance, this is the repetition of vowel sounds and it's not necessarily at the beginning of the sentence. So for example, the word all and whole. You see how we pronounce the letter A? Okay, this is a vowel and it has the same way of pronunciation. But for example, all and hand. Okay, you have the vowel A, but it's not pronounced the same. So we cannot consider this assonance. You got the difference between alliteration and the assonance? Okay. Repetition. Repetition is one of the figures of speech that a poet can use when he uses a certain word or a certain phrase more than once in order to focus on a certain idea. Actually, these last three figures of speech, alliteration, assonance, and repetition, they also serve within the internal music of the lines, okay? Because we are dealing with the sounds and so on. So they have to do with the internal music. What about the external music? Actually, the external music is served with the rhyme scheme, because with the rhyme scheme, we are focusing on the external or the ending sound in each line, okay? So, after revising these literary terms, what about having a look at some lines that we haven't seen before? You haven't dealt with these lines in any of the previous years, and try to apply the previous literary terms on them. Okay, as you see here, this is an extract from a poem called Funeral Blues. It's by W.H. Auden, okay? Before reading this stanza or this extract from the poem, I want you to have a look and think about the title of the poem, Funeral Blues. What's funeral? Funeral is actually the ceremony of burying someone who is dead, okay? And blues, usually when you say, if you remember the expression feeling blue, we usually use this expression to express sadness. Okay, so if I said, I'm feeling blue today, it means that I'm sad. So from the title of the poem, you can realize that this poem actually is not going to be a cheerful one or talking about happy moments, for example. So you expect from the topic or from the title of the poem that it's going to deal with emotions of sadness somehow. Okay, and maybe death, because we said funeral. Let's read the lines and try to understand or think what the poet wants to convey to us here. He was my north, my south, my east and my west, my working week and my Sunday rest, my moon, my midnight, my talk, my song. I thought that love would last forever. I was wrong. Okay, as you see here, the tone, okay, somehow is accompanied with sadness, despair, okay? If you are comparing someone to be your north, your south, as if you are saying that this person was your whole direction, as if this person is the center that you are rotating around. And then, he was everything to you while you are working or even at your rest. And then, this person also was the part of your day, your moon, your midnight, your evening, your talk, your song. So when you are happy, you consider this person everything. I thought that love would last forever. I thought, as you see, and if you noticed in the previous lines, that the tense is past. So we are talking about a person that passed away or died. And that's why we are talking about these past memories and the sadness that goes with the last line. I thought that love would last forever, but actually he lost this person and he was wrong about the idea that this person will last forever for him. This is what we understood or what we gathered through reading the lines. So now we can be ready for the first step, which is the paraphrase, explaining. So, as we read in the previous lines, here the lines tell the story of the death of someone and how that has affected the speaker, the poet here. The poet expresses how he feels after somebody important passed away. He explains what this person meant to him. the points of the compass, it means the directions. So he has lost his directions. He has lost everything, his talk and his song. He thought that his love would last forever, but it has been replaced by grief. And grief here is sadness. Okay. The second step of analyzing any poem is to try to pick out the figures of speech. What are the figures of speech that we have noticed through reading the lines? If you noticed here any kind of metaphor, look here again to the lines. He was my north, my west, my south, my east, and so on. Can you address some person that this is my west, or he is my talk, he is my song? So as you see, the whole stanza or the whole lines, okay, are based on metaphor, because you are comparing a person to something without the word as or like or resembles. Okay, so the whole verse is based on metaphor as the poet compares his loved one that he lost as his directions, his work, his rest, his noon, his midnight, his talk, and his song. Also, there is contrast that was very clear here, because he said north and south, east and west, working week and rest, noon and midnight. All these are opposites. And we said that the function of the contrast is to clarify the meaning. Okay. If we want to discuss the rhyme scheme, we said that the rhyme scheme is responsible for the external music, because we are looking for the sounds that appear at the end of the lines. So, west, rest. You find that the same sound is repeated in line 1 and 2. So, the rhyme scheme, AA. And then, song, wrong. It's the same sound, so it's BB. So the rhyme scheme of this stanza is AA, BB. Okay, sometimes he can ask you to pick out the main idea of the poem. What is the main idea here? As we said that the whole part was actually about a person who is lamenting. Lamenting, it means expressing grief or sadness, the death or the loss of someone very, very dear to him, and how he is suffering after their death. Okay, so as you see here, the poet laments, as we said, expresses extreme grief, his loss of the person he loved. And the lines express many emotions, including mourning. And mourning here, it means to be sad after the death of someone. Pain, despair, and sadness. Okay? I hope that you understood how to analyze any poem, going through the paraphrase, the figures of speech, and exploring the main idea. Thank you, my dears.